What would you do if you saw someone helpless surrounded by cruelty? In today's story, you'll witness an incredible act of courage that will leave you inspired and speechless. Don't miss a second of this emotional journey. If you enjoy stories that touch your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more. The parking lot of the roadside cafe was bustling with activity. Cars pulled in and out, and people went about their day, sipping coffee or grabbing snacks. Among them was a young black girl, Lila, seated quietly in her wheelchair. Her frail frame was wrapped in a blanket, and the patches of thin hair on her head reflected the toll of months of chemotherapy. Lila's parents had gone inside the cafe to grab food, leaving her by the bench just outside the entrance. She clutched the handles of her wheelchair tightly, trying to focus on the sounds of the birds rather than the stares from strangers. Her calm was shattered by the roar of motorcycle engines. A group of leather-clad bikers pulled into the parking lot, their laughter loud and boisterous. They parked their bikes haphazardly and began talking amongst themselves. At first, Lila thought they wouldn't notice her, but her hope faded as one of the bikers, a burly man with a shaved head, pointed directly at her. "Hey, boys, look over there," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "What do we have here? A little racer and her fancy wheels." The other bikers turned to look, their faces lighting up with amusement. Lila's heart sank as they began walking toward her. She wanted to roll away, to hide, but her body was frozen in fear. One of them, a wiry man with a snake tattoo winding up his neck, leaned down to her level. "You lost, kid? Or is this your big day out?" Lila tried to look away, but another biker, this one with a graying beard, snickered. "What's the matter, sweetheart? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too tired from, well, sitting around all day?" Their laughter echoed through the parking lot. Lila's cheeks burned, but she refused to cry. She had learned long ago that crying only made bullies worse. Instead, she stared at her hands, gripping the wheelchair handles even tighter. "You see her hair?" the man with the tattoo sneered. "Or should I say, what's left of it? Looks like somebody's been having a little too much fun with the clippers." The gray-bearded man chuckled darkly. "Nah, that's not a haircut. That's just what happens when you got nothing left in you. Guess it's fitting. Weak wheels for a weak girl." Lila flinched as one of them nudged her wheelchair with his boot, making it roll back a few inches. "Don't touch me," she whispered, barely audible. "What's that?" the tattooed man asked, leaning in closer. "You trying to say something, little miss? Speak up. We can't hear you." "Don't touch me," she said again, her voice trembling but a little louder this time. "Or what?" he said, grinning. "You gonna roll away? Oh, wait, you can't even do that right." The others roared with laughter. By now, a few onlookers had noticed the scene unfolding, but none of them moved to intervene. Some quickly walked away, pretending they hadn't seen anything, while others stayed at a distance, watching with expressions that ranged from discomfort to outright indifference. Lila's eyes filled with tears despite her best efforts. The humiliation was unbearable, but what hurt more was the realization that no one would help her. She was completely alone, surrounded by men who saw her as nothing more than a target for their cruelty. The bikers were getting bolder. One of them reached out as if to grab the blanket draped over her legs. "What's under here, huh? Another pair of useless—" "Hey!" The voice cut through the air like a thunderclap. It was deep, commanding, and full of authority. The bikers froze mid-laugh, turning toward the source of the interruption. Lila looked up too, her tear-filled eyes widening in disbelief. Standing at the entrance to the cafe was a man who seemed to radiate strength. His broad shoulders and muscular build made him an imposing figure, but it was the fire in his piercing blue eyes that silenced the bikers. He stepped forward, his every movement deliberate and powerful. The sunlight glinted off his unmistakable face. It was John Cena. For a moment, no one spoke. The bikers exchanged uncertain glances, clearly trying to decide if they should be worried. Lila could feel the atmosphere shift. There was something about this man, something unshakable that made her feel, for the first time, that she might be safe. Cena stopped a few feet away from the group, his gaze fixed on the man with the snake tattoo. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, his voice low but laced with fury. The tattooed man smirked, though it was obvious he was nervous. "Just having a little fun," he said, his tone defensive. "What's it to you?" Cena took another step forward. The sheer size of him made the bikers instinctively take a step back. "Fun? You call mocking a kid fun? Picking on someone who can't fight back?" His voice rose slightly, filled with controlled anger. "That's not fun. That's pathetic." "Hey, man, we don't want any trouble," the gray-bearded man said, raising his hands. But Cena wasn't backing down. "You've already got trouble," Cena said, "the kind you don't walk away from." The bikers were visibly tense now, but the man with the tattoo tried to act tough. "And what are you going to do about it, big guy?" Cena didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Lila, his expression softening. "You okay?" he asked her gently. She nodded shakily, though her tears hadn't stopped. Cena straightened, his gaze snapping back to the bikers. "Get out of here," he said, "now, before you regret staying." The tattooed man opened his mouth to retort, but Cena didn't give him the chance. He stepped forward, closing the gap between them. His sheer presence was enough to make the man hesitate. The bikers looked at each other, clearly debating their next move. Finally, one of them muttered, "Let's go," and they began to back away. But the tattooed man lingered, his pride refusing to let him leave without the last word. "This isn't over," he snarled, pointing a finger at Cena. "You're—" Cena took one more step, and the man flinched. "Yes, it is," Cena said firmly. The bikers retreated to their motorcycles, muttering under their breath as they sped out of the parking lot. The tension in the air dissipated, leaving behind an uneasy silence. Cena turned back to Lila, kneeling beside her. "You're safe now," he said, his voice kind. "They won't bother you again." For the first time that day, Lila managed a small, tearful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. Cena smiled back, but his eyes were still filled with determination. "Let's get you inside. You're not alone anymore." He wheeled her toward the cafe, the whispers of the bystanders following them. The first act of courage had been taken, but Cena knew this was only the beginning. John Cena stood firmly in the parking lot, his broad frame casting a long shadow over the pavement. The lingering tension hung in the air as the bikers, now visibly agitated, exchanged nervous glances. The leader of the group, a man with a graying beard and a leather jacket adorned with menacing patches, stepped forward. His bravado hadn't entirely faltered, but there was a hesitation in his movements. He was trying to size up Cena, weighing his options. "You think you're some kind of hero?" the leader sneered, his voice attempting to mask his growing fear. "You don't scare us, big guy." Cena's eyes didn't waver. He looked directly at the man, his calm but commanding voice slicing through the false bravado. "You had your chance to walk away. Now you're going to regret staying." The leader scoffed, motioning for his gang to stand their ground. "Boys, Let's show this guy what happens when someone crosses us." One of the younger bikers lunged at Cena first, clearly eager to prove himself. Cena sidestepped the attack with practiced ease, catching the man by the arm and twisting it behind his back. With a fluid motion, Cena lifted the biker off the ground and slammed him down with his signature attitude adjustment, the impact reverberating across the parking lot. Gasps echoed from the onlookers as the younger man groaned in pain, writhing on the ground. Two more bikers charged simultaneously, but Cena was ready. He ducked under a wild swing from the first man, grabbing him by the waist and throwing him into the second attacker with a perfectly executed suplex. Both men crashed into the side of a parked car, leaving them dazed and struggling to get back up. The leader cursed under his breath, clearly realizing Cena wasn't just some ordinary passerby. He barked at the remaining bikers to surround Cena. "Don't let him take you one at a time," he yelled. Cena stood his ground as three men circled him, their faces a mix of anger and fear. The first one feigned a punch, trying to distract Cena while another attempted to tackle him from behind. Cena anticipated the move, spinning around just in time to deliver a crushing clothesline that sent the attacker sprawling. The other two hesitated, but Cena wasn't about to give them the upper hand. He lunged forward, grabbing one by the collar and delivering a bone-jarring five-knuckle shuffle that left the man crumpled on the ground. The final biker tried to run, realizing he was outmatched, but Cena caught him by the back of his jacket. Lifting him effortlessly, Cena locked him into a brutal STF, holding the struggling man in place until he yelled out in pain. Okay, I'm done," the biker cried, tapping the pavement in surrender. The leader, now the only one standing, stepped back, his confidence shattered. "You're crazy," he spat, trying to mask his fear with anger. "This isn't over. You'll pay for this." Cena slowly approached him, his towering presence making the man stumble backward. "You think you're tough?" Cena said, his voice low and steady. "Picking on a little girl who can't defend herself? You're nothing. And if I ever see you or your gang anywhere near her again, you'll wish you'd walked away today." The leader glared at Cena, his fists clenched, but he didn't dare make a move. Instead, he turned and limped toward his motorcycle. "We're leaving," he barked at the remaining bikers, who were already dragging their injured comrades toward their bikes. One by one, the engines roared to life, and the gang sped off, their arrogance left behind in the dust. The parking lot grew quiet again, save for the murmurs of the bystanders who had witnessed the entire ordeal. Cena turned back to Lila, who was still sitting in her wheelchair, her wide eyes locked on him. She looked both terrified and awestruck, her small hands gripping the edges of her blanket tightly. Cena knelt beside her, his tone softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Lila hesitated, then nodded, though her voice came out shaky. I think so. Thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Cena said, smiling warmly. "No one should ever treat you like that." At that moment, Lila's parents burst out of the cafe, their faces etched with panic. "Lila," her mother cried, rushing over and dropping to her knees beside her daughter. "Are you hurt? What happened?" Before Lila could answer, Cena stepped in. "She's fine now," he assured them. "Those guys won't bother her again." Her father looked up at Cena, recognition dawning on his face. "Wait, you're John Cena, aren't you?" Cena nodded, but his focus remained on Lila. "I just happened to be here," he said, "but I'm glad I was." Her mother's eyes welled with tears as she hugged Lila tightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you so much." Cena gave them a reassuring smile. "I'm just glad she's safe." As Lila's parents began to wheel her toward their car, Cena stayed behind watching them go. He could see the lingering fear in Lila's eyes, and it struck a chord deep within him. This wasn't just about what had happened in the parking lot. It was about everything she was going through. The illness, the stares, the isolation. Cena made a decision right then and there. He wouldn't just walk away. Lila needed someone in her corner, and he was determined to be that person. With a determined look, he turned and walked back into the cafe, already thinking of ways to help her beyond what had happened today. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The cafe parking lot had returned to its usual quiet, but the events that had just unfolded left an unmistakable tension in the air. The defeated bikers had roared away on their motorcycles, and the murmurs of the onlookers began to fade as people resumed their activities. John Cena stood near the entrance of the cafe, his imposing figure still drawing glances from passers-by. He watched as Lila's parents gently helped her into their car, her wheelchair folded into the trunk. Lila waved timidly through the window as her family drove off, her expression a mixture of relief and gratitude. Cena walked toward his own car, but he couldn't shake the weight of what he'd seen. The image of the terrified girl surrounded by those men replayed in his mind. She had been so vulnerable, and yet so many people had done nothing. Cena clenched his fists at the thought, his resolve strengthening. He wasn't just going to let this be a one-time intervention. That girl deserved more than a fleeting moment of justice. She deserved lasting support. Later that evening, Cena sat in his hotel room, scrolling through his phone. He searched for news about the town, the cafe, anything that might give him a clue about Lila's situation. Eventually, he found a local social media post about the incident. A bystander had uploaded a video of Cena confronting the bikers, and it was already gaining traction. The comments ranged from praise for Cena's bravery to outrage at the bystanders who had done nothing. One comment caught his attention. Someone mentioned recognizing Lila from the local hospital's pediatric oncology unit. Cena's heart sank. He had suspected her frail appearance was due to an illness, but seeing it confirmed hit him hard. She was battling something far greater than bullies. He decided to take action. The next morning, Cena called his manager and explained the situation. He wanted to find out more about Lila and her family, and he was determined to help. With his connections and resources, it didn't take long to get the information he needed. Lila's family lived modestly, and her parents were doing everything they could to afford her treatments. However, the financial strain was enormous, and the emotional toll on Lila was evident. She had been undergoing chemotherapy for over a year, and while her prognosis was hopeful, the journey was far from over. Cena felt a deep responsibility. He knew the impact of having someone in your corner, someone who believed in you when times were tough. He resolved to be that person for Lila. He reached out to the hospital where she was being treated and offered to cover the costs of her remaining treatments. The hospital staff were stunned by his generosity, but Cena made it clear that his involvement didn't end there. He wanted to meet with Lila again, not as a celebrity, but as someone who cared. A week later, Cena visited the hospital. Dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans, he didn't want to draw attention to himself. The staff led him to the pediatric oncology ward, where Lila was resting in her room. When he entered, her eyes widened in disbelief. "John Cena?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Cena grinned and pulled up a chair next to her bed. "Hey, champ, thought I'd check in on you." Lila's parents, who were seated nearby, looked equally surprised. Her mother rose to greet him, her eyes welling up with tears. "Mr. Cena, we don't even know what to say. Thank you for what you did at the cafe." "You don't have to thank me," Cena said, shaking his head. "I'm just glad I was there. But I wanted to make sure you're doing okay." Lila nodded shyly. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Cena spent the next hour talking with Lila and her family. He asked about her favorite things, her hobbies, and what she missed most about being healthy. Lila opened up gradually, sharing her love for drawing and how much she wished she could visit the beach again someday. Cena listened intently, taking mental notes of everything she said. Before leaving, Cena made a promise. "Lila, I'm going to be here for you, whatever you need, whenever you need it. You're not fighting this alone." For the first time, Lila smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up her face. Her parents expressed their gratitude once again, but Cena waved it off. "We're a team now," he said, "and teams stick together." Over the next few weeks, Cena became a regular presence in Lila's life. He visited her in the hospital, bringing gifts and surprises that lifted her spirits. He arranged for a virtual meet and greet with some of her favorite wrestlers who sent her messages of encouragement. Cena also used his platform to quietly raise awareness and funds for pediatric cancer treatment, ensuring that other families like Lila's wouldn't have to face the same financial hardships. The bond between Cena and Lila grew stronger with each visit. He didn't just bring her joy, he gave her hope. Her treatments began showing positive results, and though the road ahead was still challenging, Lila faced it with renewed strength. Cena's unwavering support reminded her that she was worth fighting for, that her life mattered. As Lila's health improved, Cena started planning something special. He wanted to show her that the world was still full of wonder and that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. He had an idea brewing, one that would remind her she wasn't just surviving, but thriving. But for now, he focused on being there for her, one day at a time, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could make the biggest difference. John Cena sat in the waiting room of the hospital's pediatric oncology ward, scrolling through his phone as he planned his next move to help Lila. Over the past few weeks, he had become a fixture in her life, visiting regularly and offering her the kind of encouragement that seemed to ignite her spirit. But Cena knew words and visits, though important, were only part of the support she needed. Lila's fight against cancer wasn't just physical. It was emotional and financial, too. He was determined to make a lasting difference. When the nurse signaled that Lila was ready to see him, Cena pocketed his phone and walked toward her room. Inside, Lila sat propped up in bed, a sketchpad resting on her lap. Her parents were by her side, as always, but their tired eyes lit up when Cena entered. Lila looked up and smiled, the most genuine expression of happiness he'd seen from her yet. "Hey, champ," Cena greeted her, pulling up a chair. "What are you working on?" Lila held up her sketchpad shyly, revealing a drawing of the ocean. "It's a beach," she said softly. "I've never been to one, but I want to someday." Cena smiled warmly, taking the sketchpad from her hands to get a better look. "You've got some serious talent, Lila. This is amazing." Lila's cheeks flushed with pride, and her parents exchanged a grateful glance. They had seen the way Cena's presence lifted their daughter's spirits, giving her the strength to face each new day. But they also knew the fight was far from over. As the conversation shifted to lighter topics, Cena noticed the quiet exhaustion in Lila's parents. After a while, he gently suggested that they step out for some air while he stayed with Lila. Though hesitant, they eventually agreed, leaving Cena and Lila alone. Cena leaned forward, his tone serious but kind. "Lila, I've been thinking. I want to do more to help you, not just with your treatments, but with everything. Is there anything you've been dreaming about? Anything you've always wanted to do?" Lila hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. I've always wanted to see the ocean, to feel the sand under my feet and hear the waves, but..." Her voice trailed off and she shrugged. "It's just a dream." Cena's heart clenched. "Dreams are important, Lila, and you deserve to see yours come true." She looked at him, her eyes wide with hope. "Really?" "Really," Cena said firmly, "and I promise we're going to make it happen." Over the next few days, Cena worked tirelessly to put his plan into action. He reached out to his network of contacts, securing a private beach house for Lila and her family. He coordinated with the hospital to ensure she could travel safely and arranged for medical staff to accompany them if necessary. The logistics were complicated, but Cena wouldn't let anything stand in the way of giving Lila the experience of a lifetime. When the day finally arrived, Cena met Lila and her parents at the hospital. Lila's face lit up as she saw the limo waiting to take them to the beach. She couldn't stop smiling as Cena helped her into the car, her excitement contagious. The drive was filled with laughter and stories, and by the time they arrived, the sun was beginning to set over the ocean. Lila's eyes widened as she took in the view, the endless expanse of water shimmering under the golden light. For a moment, she was speechless, her hand gripping Cena's tightly as he helped her out of the car. It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Cena smiled, his own heart full as he watched her take it all in. "Welcome to your dream, champ." They spent the evening on the beach, Lila's parents capturing every moment on camera. Cena carried Lila down to the water, letting her feel the cool waves lap at her feet. She laughed, a bright, unrestrained sound that brought tears to her parents' eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lila wasn't a patient or a victim. She was just a kid, experiencing the magic of the world. That night, as they sat around a small bonfire, Cena shared stories of his wrestling career, making Lila laugh with tales of his early days in the ring. He promised to take her to one of his matches as soon as she was strong enough, a promise that made her eyes light up with determination. When the trip ended, Lila's spirits were higher than ever. Cena had given her more than just a day at the beach. He had given her hope and a reminder that she was capable of overcoming anything. Her parents couldn't thank him enough, but Cena waved off their gratitude. "Lila's part of my team now," he said, "and I don't let my teammates down." As they returned to the hospital, Lila held on to the memories of the ocean, using them as fuel to keep fighting. Cena, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just helping Lila, he was learning from her, inspired by her courage and resilience. Together, they were proving that even in the darkest times, there was light to be found. Lila sat in her hospital bed, the memories of her day at the beach still fresh in her mind. Her room, usually filled with the sterile scent of medical equipment, now felt brighter with the photos and seashells she had brought back. She clung to those moments as she braced herself for what lay ahead. Today was the beginning of another round of chemotherapy, and despite her growing strength, the looming treatment filled her with dread. Her parents sat nearby, offering silent support, but their worried glances betrayed their anxiety. Lila kept her focus on the small seashell in her hand, letting its rough texture ground her. The door creaked open, and in walked John Cena, his presence filling the room with energy. He carried a large tote bag slung over his shoulder and flashed Lila his signature grin. "Mornin', champ," he said, pulling up a chair next to her bed. "How are we feeling today?" Lila gave a small smile, though her tired eyes showed her true feelings. "Nervous," she admitted softly. Cena nodded, his expression serious. "That's okay. It's normal to feel that way. But remember, you're not facing this alone. You've got a whole team behind you, and that includes me." He reached into his tote bag and began pulling out items one by one. First was a plush wrestling championship belt, complete with her name engraved on a small golden plate. Lila's eyes lit up as she took it from him, running her fingers over the lettering. Next came a stack of handwritten notes from Cena's wrestling colleagues, each one filled with messages of encouragement and strength. Finally, he revealed a pair of tickets to his next live wrestling event. "These are for you and your parents," Cena explained. "When you're feeling up to it, I want you to be my special guest. You'll sit ringside, and after the match, we'll get you in the ring for some photos. Deal?" Lila's smile widened as she nodded. "Deal." The room felt lighter as Cena continued to talk, his stories drawing laughter from both Lila and her parents. He stayed by her side as the nurses prepared her for the treatment, holding her hand when the IV was inserted. His presence was a distraction from the discomfort, a reminder that she was stronger than she believed. When the treatment began, Lila closed her eyes, imagining the ocean waves she had seen just days ago. Cena sat quietly, letting her rest but never leaving her side. Hours passed, and when the session finally ended, Lila looked drained but grateful. She whispered a quiet "thank you" to Cena, who responded with a gentle squeeze of her hand. Over the next several weeks, Cena's visits became a routine. He wasn't just there for the big moments, he was there for the quiet ones too. He brought her small surprises, like art supplies to fuel her love for drawing or snacks she missed from home. More importantly, he brought his unwavering support, reminding her that every step forward, no matter how small, was a victory. Lila's parents marveled at the bond that had formed between their daughter and Cena. They saw how his presence gave her a new kind of strength, one that couldn't be measured in medical charts. Even on her hardest days, when the treatments left her weak and nauseous, Lila found reasons to smile. Cena's belief in her never wavered, and that belief became her own. As the weeks turned into months, the treatments began to show positive results. Lila's doctors were cautiously optimistic, and her parents allowed themselves a small glimmer of hope. Lila herself seemed brighter, more determined. She talked about the things she wanted to do once she was better, from visiting the beach again to attending Cena's wrestling match. Cena continued to rally support for Lila outside the hospital as well. He quietly launched a fundraiser for pediatric cancer treatment, using his platform to shine a light on families facing similar battles. The response was overwhelming, and donations poured in from fans and celebrities alike. Cena made sure Lila's family knew they weren't alone, that their community extended far beyond the walls of the hospital. One day, as Lila sat sketching in her room, Cena entered with a mischievous grin. He carried a small wrapped box and set it on her lap. "What's this?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Open it and find out," Cena said, his eyes twinkling. Lila tore off the wrapping paper to reveal a custom-made action figure of herself, complete with a miniature wheelchair and a tiny wrestling championship belt. She gasped, her eyes wide with delight. "Is this me?" "Of course it's you." Cena said proudly. Every champ deserves their own action figure. Lila laughed, holding the figure up to inspect the details. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to her. In that moment, she felt like a hero, not a patient. As the day ended, Cena prepared to leave, but not before kneeling beside Lila's bed. "You're doing amazing, champ," he told her, "and no matter what, I'm here for you. Always." Lila nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, John, for everything." Cena left the hospital that night feeling a deep sense of purpose. Helping Lila wasn't just about supporting her through her battle with cancer. It was about showing her the strength she already had. She was a fighter, and he was honored to be in her corner. Together, they were proving that even the toughest challenges could be met with courage, kindness, and an unbreakable bond. Lila sat in her wheelchair by the window of her hospital room, watching the sunlight dance on the glass. The treatments had been grueling, and there were days when she felt like giving up. But today was different. Her strength was returning, little by little, and her doctors were starting to share good news. The tumors had shrunk significantly, and the outlook was becoming brighter. Still, there was a long road ahead, and Lila knew the fight wasn't over. Yet, with every visit from John Cena, she found herself more determined to keep going. It had been weeks since Cena had first stepped into her life, and in that time, he had become more than a friend. He was her biggest supporter. True to his promise, Cena had invited Lila and her parents to one of his live wrestling events, and today was the day. The hospital staff had worked closely with Cena to ensure Lila could attend safely, and her parents had been thrilled to see how excited she was. Her wheelchair had been decorated with colorful streamers, and Lila wore a custom-made shirt with Cena's catchphrase, "Never give up." As the family arrived at the arena, Lila's eyes widened in awe. The massive crowd, the bright lights, and the roaring energy were unlike anything she had ever experienced. Cena had arranged for them to have the best seats in the house right next to the ring. As they were escorted to their spot, fans in the crowd began to recognize Lila. Word of her story had spread, thanks to Cena's quiet advocacy, and people waved and cheered for her as she passed by. For the first time in a long time, Lila felt like a star. When Cena appeared in the ring, the crowd erupted in applause. He paused before beginning the match, taking a microphone and addressing the audience. "Tonight," he began, his voice booming through the arena, "is about more than wrestling. It's about strength, resilience, and the power of never giving up. And there's someone very special here tonight who embodies all of that." He turned toward Lila, pointing directly at her. "Lila, this match is for you." The crowd went wild, chanting her name. Lila's cheeks flushed with pride as she waved shyly. Her parents held back tears, overwhelmed by the love and support their daughter was receiving. Cena smiled at her before stepping back to face his opponent. The match began, and it was everything Lila had dreamed of. Cena performed with his trademark energy, executing his signature moves with precision. Every time he landed a move, he glanced toward Lila, dedicating each moment to her. As the match reached its climax, Cena faced off against his opponent in a dramatic showdown. With the crowd on their feet, he delivered his finishing move, the attitude adjustment, and pinned his opponent for the win. The arena erupted in cheers, and Cena raised his arms in victory. But instead of celebrating in the ring, he stepped out and walked directly to Lila. The crowd parted to let him through as he approached her, still sweaty and breathless from the fight. Kneeling beside her, Cena handed her the championship belt he had just won. "This belongs to you, champ," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You're the real winner here." Lila's hands trembled as she took the belt, her eyes brimming with tears. She hugged it tightly, unable to find the words to express how she felt. The crowd began to chant again, this time louder than ever. "Lila! Lila! Lila!" After the event, Cena took Lila and her family backstage for a private tour. She met other wrestlers who greeted her with hugs and words of encouragement. They treated her like part of the team, and for the first time, Lila felt truly strong. Cena stayed by her side the entire time, ensuring she felt comfortable and special. Before they left, he knelt beside her again, looking her in the eye. "You've come so far, Lila," he said, "and I know you're going to keep going. No matter what happens, remember this. You're a fighter, and you've already won the hardest battles. I'm proud of you." Lila nodded, her smile brighter than it had ever been. "Thank you, John," she said softly, "for everything." As they returned to the hospital that night, Lila's spirits were higher than ever. The memories of the match, the cheers of the crowd, and the love she had felt carried her through the coming weeks. Cena continued to visit, but now their conversations were filled with laughter and plans for the future. Lila talked about all the things she wanted to do once she was fully recovered: traveling, going back to school, and maybe even becoming an artist. Cena listened with pride, knowing he had played a small part in helping her rediscover her dreams. The bond between them had grown into something unbreakable. Lila's parents often marveled at how much their daughter had changed since Cena entered their lives. She was no longer the quiet, fearful girl they had once known. She was confident, strong, and full of hope. As the weeks went on, Lila's health continued to improve. Her doctors were optimistic, and her treatments became less frequent. With each passing day, she grew closer to the life she had dreamed of. And through it all, Cena remained by her side, proving that sometimes the greatest victories happen not in the ring, but in the lives we touch and the hearts we inspire. Lila's life had transformed in ways she never imagined. The once quiet and fearful girl had blossomed into someone filled with hope, determination, and a renewed sense of purpose. Her treatments were nearly complete, and the doctors were thrilled with her progress. Each day brought her closer to remission, a word that once felt impossible to her and her family. But as her body healed, so too did her spirit, and much of that was thanks to John Cena, who had remained a constant presence in her life. One sunny afternoon, Lila and her parents were invited to Cena's home. He had planned a small celebration to mark the end of her treatment and to honor her incredible journey. When they arrived, Lila was greeted with a surprise, a gathering of Cena's closest friends and colleagues, all there to celebrate her strength. Balloons, banners, and a giant cake adorned the backyard, and a large sign read, "Lila, our champion." Lila couldn't believe her eyes. She had never experienced such an outpouring of love and support. Cena approached her with a big smile and knelt to her level, placing a small gold medal around her neck. "This is for you, champ," he said, "because you've shown all of us what true strength looks like." Lila beamed, holding the medal close to her heart. The party was filled with laughter, games, and heartfelt moments. Cena introduced her to more wrestlers who treated her like one of their own. She even got to practice a few mock wrestling moves on a padded mat, with Cena guiding her every step of the way. For the first time in a long while, Lila felt like a regular kid, free from the weight of her illness. As the evening drew to a close, Cena called for everyone's attention. He stood with Lila in the center of the backyard, his arm resting gently on her shoulder. "I've met a lot of incredible people in my life," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "But Lila, You're one of the strongest, most inspiring individuals I've ever had the honor of knowing. You've faced challenges most of us can't even imagine, and you've come out stronger on the other side. You're a fighter, a champion, and a reminder to all of us to never give up. The crowd erupted in applause, and Lila's parents wiped tears from their eyes. Lila herself was overwhelmed, but her smile never wavered. She hugged Cena tightly, her small arms barely able to wrap around his massive frame. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Cena knelt down, looking her in the eye. "You did this, Lila. You fought every step of the way, and you won. I'm just glad I got to be a part of your journey." In the weeks that followed, Lila's life continued to improve. She returned to school, where she was greeted like a hero by her classmates and teachers. She started drawing again, her sketches now filled with scenes of strength, hope, and victory. And through it all, Cena remained a constant presence, checking in on her and celebrating every milestone. One day, Lila received an invitation from Cena to join him at a charity event supporting pediatric cancer research. The event was televised, and Cena introduced Lila as the guest of honor. Standing on stage with him, Lila spoke to the crowd, her voice steady and confident. She shared her story, thanking everyone who had supported her and reminding them of the importance of never giving up. Her words moved everyone in the audience, and many wiped away tears as she spoke. After the event, Cena pulled Lila aside. "You're a natural," he said with a grin. "I think you've got a bright future ahead of you, champ." Lila smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Maybe I'll become a wrestler like you one day." Cena laughed, ruffling her hair gently. "I'd love that. But no matter what you choose to do, I'll always be in your corner." As the months turned into years, Lila continued to thrive. She remained cancer-free, her health stronger than ever. Her bond with Cena never wavered, and they stayed in touch, often collaborating on projects to support other children battling cancer. Lila became an advocate, using her story to inspire others and remind them that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. John Cena had entered Lila's life as a hero, but he became so much more: a mentor, a friend, and a symbol of unwavering support. And while Cena had spent years inspiring millions in the ring, it was Lila who had inspired him the most, teaching him that true strength isn't just about physical power. It's about resilience, kindness, and the ability to lift others up when they need it most. Their story was a testament to the power of connection, proving that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. And for Lila and Cena, their journey together was only the beginning of a lifelong friendship built on courage, compassion, and the belief that no one fights alone. And that's the story of how kindness and courage can change a life forever. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if it moved you, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button to join us for more inspiring stories.